Hi, welcome to Bookey. To unlock more world-class bestseller, please download our app. Just search for Bookey at Apple Store or Google Play. You will get 7 days free trial with more features. Today we will unlock the book Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard with You. Change is nothing new to us. For example, we may want to change our overweight body through physical exercise, build up good social relations through positive communication, or improve our knowledge structure through study. Everyone has dreamed of making changes. But when it comes down to it, we often have no idea where to begin. We keep ourselves busy, spend plenty of time and energy, but fail to make any real change. Things may even get worse. We then lose heart and feel like giving up. So, what on earth are the factors that influence change? What are the ways to realize change? This Bookey will answer these questions. This book was co-authored by Chip Heath and Dan Heath, American international psychological best-selling writers. Chip Heath is a professor at organizational behavior at Stanford Graduate School of Business. Dan Heath is a senior researcher at Duke University's Center for the Advancement of Social Entrepreneurship, and a co-founder of a college textbook publishing firm called ThinkWell. They also wrote the critically acclaimed books, Made to Stick and Decisive. The book Switch introduces a psychological model called the elephant and the rider. The rider stands for the rational mind who has a long-term view, and loves contemplating and analyzing all kinds of issues. The elephant represents the emotional mind who always follows its feeling and acts on its emotions. The path refers to the surrounding environment. Through vivid and interesting cases, this book illustrates how to change things when change is hard, using the following 3 aspects. 1. Let the rational rider find the direction of change. 2. Let the emotional elephant find the feeling of change. 3. Shape the environment of change. We'll go through them one by one. In our daily life, the rider is a great thinker, an analyzer and a plan maker. When it comes to change, the rider will contemplate on the upcoming problems and difficulties until he feels worried, and regards change as extremely difficult. In the end, nothing has been done. All plans remain plans. There are 3 tips to free the rider from such a plight. The first tip is to help the rider find the bright spots. This refers to the rider finding examples of successful change, and exploring the internal cause of the success. The rider can draw on this previous experience to make change easier. For instance, Jerry Sternin was working for Save the Children, an international charity organization, and had been asked to solve the malnutrition problem of the local kids in Vietnam. Many factors caused the malnutrition, such as poor sanitation, universal poverty, lack of clean water, and rural people's ignorance about nutrition. Since every factor was tough, it was impossible to change them all within a short period. So, where to start? By doing research in the village, Jerry Sternin found that some kids were taller than others, even though they all came from poor families. He thus talked to the mothers. They told him that they were feeding their kids 4 times a day. Eating smaller meals more frequently was good for the kids to get nutrition. They had also mixed tiny crabs, shrimp and sweet potato greens into the kids' rice. Though a bit different from the locals' living habits, it solved the malnutrition problem. Sternin then recommended this method to other families. Since it was a native solution, it was soon well accepted. Through finding the bright spots within the village and spreading the experience, 6 months after Sternin had come to the Vietnamese village, 65% of the local kids were better nourished. Hence, in order to change, we first need to find the bright spots. They will enable us to see hope, increase our confidence, and make change more efficient. As we mentioned before, the rider tends to overanalyze and overthink things, but eventually makes no progress and wastes his energy. What looks like resistance is actually a lack of clarity. Now it's high time to turn to the second tip: script the critical moves. Another example in the book follows a study of 110 parents who had abused their kids. The results showed that 73% of the parents had once beaten their kids, and 20% had engaged in violent assaults, causing broken bones or severe injuries. Despite the striking numbers, those violent parents claimed that their kids were so naughty and rebellious, that violence was the only way they could get their kids to obey. In this case, how can we stop the parents' violent behaviors? The Funderburks team adopted the parent-child interaction therapy, which required the parents to play with the kids for 5 minutes every day. This was a child-directed interaction. The parents were instructed to accompany their kids, and were forbidden to lecture, command, criticize, or even ask any questions. What's more, the parents should praise the kids for some of their behaviors, and make them feel they were valued. 3 years later, only 20% of the abusive parents continued their behaviors. Albeit not perfect, it was a great outcome in general. When we script the critical moves, the writer can be clear about each step and how to avoid deviation. Clarity dissolves resistance, and makes him more likely to adopt lasting changes. Since the writer is a great thinker, he tends to make an in-depth analysis of which path to take, or if he should move on before making up his mind. By doing so, the writer often gets a sense of achievement, but is also likely to get lost. To solve this problem, we can make an attractive goal and direct him to the destination. Here comes the third tip, providing a destination postcard. Basically, it means to provide a vivid picture of the short-term future that shows what could be possible, and aims to motivate him through setting a goal. Here's an example. Crystal Jones was assigned to teach the first grade class at an elementary school in Atlanta, Georgia. She was worried about the students' academic abilities, as no one was really at the level they needed to be for first grade. In spite of that, Jones didn't give up, but tried to encourage the kids. At the beginning of the school year, she announced a goal for her class that she knew would captivate every student. "You're going to be third graders by the end of this school year." Of course, it was in the sense that they would reach the level of third grade reading skills. This goal successfully motivated the kids. Besides this, Jones also told them to call each other scholars, and developed detailed tests that resemble a game. When a student managed to pass the test, he or she could go for a higher grade. At the end of the school year, 90% of the students were reading at or above a third grade level. Such a great outcome was achieved largely because Jones provided the writers, namely the kids, an attractive destination postcard, showing that they would finally become third graders. In this way, she succeeded in motivating every student by vividly demonstrating the result of change. That's the end of part 1. The writer is a great thinker but a poor doer. Through finding the bright spots, scripting the critical moves, and pointing to the destination, we can motivate the rational writer. These strategies will help him escape from the cycle of endless thinking, and get him ready for change. They also enable the writer to control the elephant, which we will discuss in the next part. When the writer is ready, can we make a change now? Not yet. We still need to control the elephant. When facing the emotional and formidable elephant, sometimes even the writer will lose his control. The 3 tips for the writer we talked about earlier do not work for the elephant, as the latter is emotional rather than rational. What are the alternatives? It's emotion that motivates the elephant, so we should first help it find the feeling of change. Here's an example to illustrate this point. Target was a clothing company. When Robin Waters first worked for it, the company simply sold black or white stirrup pants and sweats, and the customers were fed up. As the ready-to-wear trend manager, Waters was mainly responsible for leading the department. She was expected to turn the tables and make the company a design powerhouse, so that it would stop lagging behind and start writing the trends. But Waters had no real power to push for the change, or make procurement decisions. How did she deal with this difficult situation? A good idea soon occurred to her. She would start bringing huge bags of bright-colored M&Ms to the meeting room. When she poured them into a glass bowl, they looked like cascades of turquoise, hot pink and lime green, and everyone was amazed by the colors. Then, Waters would show the purchasing agents photos from boutiques around the world, and held clothing exhibitions, so that the agents could compare products by themselves. Step by step, her efforts convinced the agents and also brought about a big change to the company. It became the frontrunner of fashion and design. Just imagine, would it have happened if Waters tried to persuade people through numbers? In almost all successful change efforts, The sequence of change is not analyze, think, change, but rather see, feel, change. Obviously, the emotional elephant cannot be convinced by numbers, but can be influenced by visual feelings. Now that the elephant feels like making a change, will it actually take action? Not necessarily. For the elephant, a big change is like a big mountain, which can be discouraging. What should we do in this case? We need to make it look easier for the elephant. Let the elephant know it doesn't have to reach the mountaintop in one try, and that it can do it step by step. There comes the second way to motivate the elephant, shrinking the change. We can divide a seemingly unreachable big goal into several small ones that are easier to achieve. For example, many people love to have a neat and tidy house, but don't want to do the housework. When we see a house full of laundry, a dusty cupboard and a scruffy sink, our elephant doesn't want to change anymore, but would rather ignore everything, as it feels like too much work. Over time, the house becomes even dirtier. Now, it's time to apply the 5-minute room rescue. Here's what you do: make house cleaning a 5-minute task, set a timer and start. Once the time is up, you can stop and take a rest. Does it feel much easier now? Certainly, the first 5 minutes won't be very effective, but a good beginning is half the battle won. Once you start cleaning, chances are you won't stop at 5 minutes. Finally, you'll find the house is becoming what you hoped it would look like. Surprise! Therefore, completing small goals brings hope, and makes us believe change is possible. Hope is like a stimulus for the elephant. As we accomplish more and more small goals, the elephant will feel more confident and motivated to make a big change. Another way to motivate the elephant through shrinking the change is to remind people how much they've already accomplished. This is similar to a placebo effect. Researchers conducted a study in which they followed 2 groups of people that joined a loyalty card campaign. Every time these people bought a car wash, they got a stamp on their cards. When they filled up their cards with 8 stamps, they got a free wash. The first group needed to collect 8 stamps for a free car wash. In comparison, the second group needed to collect 10 stamps for the free wash, but 2 stamps had already been added in their cards. Although both groups equally had to get 8 stamps, the second group achieved the goal 14% more than the other group. You must be wondering why this happened. The key lies in the fact that the second group got a head start with 2 stamps. They felt closer to the goal of a free wash, and thus were more motivated to accomplish it. Therefore, an emphasis on the achievement helps motivate people. Finally, let's talk about the third way: identify the elephant's self-image. To motivate people to change, we need to provide them with a new identity, and help them find the reasons to change through a new perspective. In this way, we will appeal to their identity to make a change. In this identity model, people first ask themselves 3 questions before making a decision. Who am I? What kind of situation is this? What would someone like me do in this situation? For instance, when people consider themselves citizens who are concerned about their nation, they believe that a citizen should always protect the national interests. Thus, what they do is not likely to run counter to the national interests. Let's look at the following example. The gorgeous St. Lucia parrots on the Caribbean island were facing extinction. In 1977, a college student, Paul Butler, was sent to St. Lucia to save the endangered parrots. He found that the local people did not care about conservation, because they thought it was none of their business. However, without their support, the St. Lucia parrots would disappear completely. What should Butler do? Since he could not convince the local people through a rational approach, he tried to change their feeling towards the parrots. He used the parrots' image for puppet shows, t-shirts, and organized a series of events. By doing so, the St. Lucia parrots became a national identity, and the local people began to embrace their parrots. Due to the increasing appeal for protecting the birds, a law was passed, and the parrots were saved from the verge of extinction. In this example, Paul Butler managed to change the local people's indifferent attitude by appealing to their local identity. This caused them to initiate various events to protect the parrots. That's all for part 2. Although the 3 tips for the rider do not apply to the elephant, these 3 approaches are highly effective for motivating the elephant: emotional approaches towards the elephant's feelings, shrinking the amount of change required, and appealing to people's various identity. Today we are just sharing limited Bookey. To unlock more key insights of world-class bestseller, please download our app. Just search for Bookey at Apple Store or Google Play. You will get 7 days free trial with more features.